Stop. Before you think about casting a vote for Trump or Hillary, know that there is another choice, a light at the end of the tunnel, a hope for the United States. And no, it's not Bernie Sanders or Jill Stein, it's Abby Friedel. She stands strong on economic, environmental, and women's rights issues. Before you vote, remember a vote wasted on these two buffoons is an opportunity to have this country soiled instead of saved. Economic issues are the root of the United States problems. Greed and poverty are far too prominent on U.S. soil. 45 million Americans are living under the poverty line in a country that has totally neglected their needs to the point where they can no longer afford to feed themselves or their families. This is why it is imperative that the National Welfare Program be expanded. However, that is not enough. One of the main reasons these Americans end up in poverty is because of the cost of living in comparison to the amount of money that they are making. It's too low. The average cost of living in a single household is $2,371, making the annual cost of living for one person about $30,000. This does not take into account the children living in the household or spouses. Any additional child with an adult is $3,000. Likewise, the average American's monthly salary is only $4,000 for someone who makes $20 an hour. For this reason, the minimum wage must be raised nationally to keep Americans from reaching and slipping under the poverty line. However, that goes without saying that new jobs need to be created so people can go and work an efficient job at $15 an hour. Therefore, if I'm elected president, I will stop outsourcing jobs overseas so the United States can finally become the booming industry that it once was, once again. In tandem with reforming the economy, I plan on creating a focus on women's rights in politics. In order to create a more healthy society for women, Planned Parenthood will be expanded in order for women's health care to be made quality and affordable. In expanding Planned Parenthood, free birth control will be made along with free HIV and cancer testing. Out of every 100 rapes, 46% get reported to the police, 12% lead to arrests, 9% get prosecuted, 5% lead to a felony conviction, and 3% of rapists will actually be jailed. That means 97% of rapists are walking around unconvicted and unnoticed. Because of this staggering and shocking statistic, the Violence Against Women and Family Prevention Act will also be expanded. This expansion will make it so a convicted rapist will not be let free after a trial and will be held accountable for what happens. Likewise, the expansion will make sure all domestic victims will have access to counseling and therapy programs in the aftermath of what happens. On the same note, programs to close the gender-based wage gap will be developed in my presence. Women are still paid 75 cents to every dollar a white man makes. Through an act I plan to pass on through Congress, girls will be exposed to more opportunities in STEM and empowered to obtain higher paying career paths. Through individual development and female empowerment, it is my highest hopes that women will be just as successful or more successful than men. As we have seen through sporadic weather patterns this past year, global warming and climate change have taken a toll on our society. Because of the lack of concern for the environment's conservation, heat trapping gas emissions rose 3%. It is obvious that actions must be taken from aiding the polar ice caps and beyond to reduce the world's use of fossil fuels and other hazardous gases which cause the poisoning of Earth's atmosphere. Of the 38.2 billion tons of fossil fuels burned this year, which is 1 billion more than the prior year, the U.S. makes up 0.15% of these gases. That adds up to an emission of 2.4 million tons of CO2 into the air every second. Since the implication of environmental laws, the U.S. has decreased its fossil fuel emission levels by 2% to 5.9 billion tons emitted. Through more government regulation and conservation of the environment, I hope to once again create a greener world that Teddy Roosevelt would have loved to see and decrease the amount of fossil fuels used in the U.S. I hope to implement bike lanes in towns and cities and creating a cleaner and more efficient public transportation system to start small and creating a cleaner environment.